one being representing a man for Uptown TV. You understand?
Yasama batachinoi, besama yemet nor, semi kades mangustinta, fegadi besama indionech, endi hu bemedir tihun, yala tenterachnen sitenzare, bedelachnem ikkar belen, igna yebedelnen ikkaren demenil, awada fetna matagban, kakifu adenenen fi, mengus tiante antanantana, highly a maskan, lizleale.
In the name of the African ancestors who began the march of humankind in the womb of Mother Africa, we ask these ancestors to be with us, to strengthen us, and give us a vision for the future. In the name of the African ancestors who began the march of humankind in the womb of Mother Africa and marched down the Nile, laying the foundations for human civilization and culture, we ask these Africans to be with us, to strengthen us, and give us a vision for the future. In the name of these African ancestors who built their pyramids and their temples to their God concepts, to their principles, and to their moral values, who left us a legacy of architectural and monumental building unparalleled in the history of the world, we ask these ancestors who built the pyramids, who built the temples, to be with us, to strengthen us, and give us a vision for the future. We ask these African ancestors who took this African culture and extended it throughout Africa, building the stone cities of Zimbabwe, building the empires of the Sudan, Ghana, Mali, and Songhai, building the Swahili city-states along the east coast of Africa, and in Christian Africa, asking King Lalibela and giving him the courage to build the 12 churches of Lalibela from the ground down, monuments to the world. We ask these Africans who spread this culture to the Dogo and to the Akan and to the Yoruba and to the Bankango and to the Zulu. We ask these Africans to be with us, to strengthen us, and give us a vision for the future. In the name of the Africans who opened up Africa, opened up the Nile Valley to other cultures and other peoples, and they came in and nurtured themselves on the African greatness. First coming in early were the ancient Hebrews, and they synthesized this culture and produced Judaism. Later coming in were the Christians, and they synthesized this culture and produced Christianity. Coming in were also the Greeks, who took the African culture, synthesized it, and produced Greek civilization. And then later, the Prophet Muhammad, and with the Arabs coming into the Nile Valley, they synthesized the culture and produced Islam. We ask these African ancestors, who as part of their legacy laid the foundations for Judaism, Christianity, Islam, and Greek civilization, to be with us, to strengthen us, and give us a vision for the future. We ask those African ancestors pulled out of Africa, taken to the hells of North America, South America, the Caribbean, maintaining the spirit of African humanity in their hearts and in their minds, and who left us this enormous legacy of struggle. We ask those Africans who resisted enslavement in the villages of Africa, who resisted enslavement in the shores of Africa, who resisted enslavement in those forts and dungeons, who resisted enslavement in the holds of those ships, who resisted enslavement when they arrived on these shores in the New World. We ask these Africans who ran into the highlands of northeast Brazil and established for 100 years the first free republic in the Americas, the Republic of Palmares, and their last great leader, Zumbi, who spared and sacrificed. We ask these Africans who replicated the Brazilian experience and went into the highlands of Jamaica and became the Maroon-free communities. We ask these Africans who went into the backwoods of the Guyanas and Suriname and created free republic of the Suramaka and the Ajuka. We ask these Africans who went into the backwoods of Georgia and the swamps of Florida and moved with the Seminole Indians and resisted oppression. We ask these Africans who left us a legacy of struggle and resistance, the likes of which no one in the world has, to be with us, to strengthen us, and give us a vision for the future. We ask these Africans who created and laid for us a foundation of struggle and resistance that was passed on generation after generation, that was passed on to Harriet Tubman, who fought her way out of enslavement and became a symbol of freedom for all of us. Similarly, Frederick Douglass and hundreds of thousands of others fought their way out of enslavement. We asked those Africans who went with Boukman, Dessalines, to create the greatest revolutionary experience in the history of the world, the Haitian Revolution, leaving us a legacy, the likes of which no one else has had. We ask these Africans to be with us, to strengthen us, and give us a vision for the future.
Let us start our class with a prayer. Heavenly Father, Divine Mother, Friend, beloved God, Jesus Christ, Bhagavan Krishna, Mahavatar Babaji, Larry Mahashai, Swami Shri Yukteswarji, our Guru, Paramahansa Yoganandaji, saints of all religions, we bow to all of you. Heavenly Father, Divine Mother, great Gurus, receive our love, receive our desire to love you more, to attune our hearts and minds with your great presence. Om. Peace.
We're watching what's happening in the UK. We're watching very, very closely what's happening in the UK because, you know, I think that at some point it's going to have to be enough is enough. There is just too much that is happening in the UK right now for us to remain silent. We talked about Diane Abbott a few weeks ago. She's back in the news because racism again and they want to get her out. But just like the way she's standing, she has really stood her ground. And so we like what we're seeing. Obviously, the election's coming up on July 4 in the UK. That's going to be, that's going to be something. If we think South Africa, you know, was shocking, which it wasn't for those of us who were watching the, what's happening just generally, politics and economics and the socioeconomic conditions and racial conditions continentally, globally. We were not surprised that the ANC got a whopping under Cyril Ramaphosa. And we'll talk about that later because we're going to go live to South Africa to get an update on what's happening with the coalition. We heard the Cyril Ramaphosa making a call now for a government of national unity. Okay, government of national unity. We'll talk about that later. What do you think about that, though? Let me know. All right, so we have that coming up. We're going to be linking with South Africa later on. But so we see what's, well, yeah, there was a Meghan Markle situation that is still ongoing. We see the racism that's been meted out to her, and it is done even for somebody who is biracial. So that's one thing that's ongoing, vicious assault, permission given to the media, the toxic British media, and to the people, the racist descendants of enslavers, to unleash their narcissism and their psychopathy and their sociopathic behavior on one woman. So that's been going on for what, something like 7 years now, without fail and without end. Then we see what's happening in football. And, you know, we're watching yesterday. Well, I didn't see the match, and but the news obviously seeped in because on the football pitch, Bukayo Saka, the inhumane, the scourge of institutionalized racial discrimination and emotional, well, it's gaslighting of this one young man and scapegoating of this one young man is beyond the pale. I don't know, and there's no serious outcry as there should be. But I think, you know, it probably will catch on because with Lewis Hamilton has come out, even though he's racing this weekend. But let me give you a quick background to what's happening. So the footballer Bukayo Saka, in the friendly warm-up for the Euro 2024 on Friday night, so England lost 0-1 against Iceland, and Iceland actually found the back of the English net in just 12 minutes into the first half of that match. And the reporting, well, as a matter of fact, some of these sports commentators and newspapers and so on, well, radio commentators, television commentators, talked about England's star player Harry Kane, and that Harry Kane actually had England's best chance of the game in the first half, but sent this chance close to the range effort-wide. So Saka was called on in the second half. He was a substitute. He played for 25 minutes. But if you look at the British newspapers, Saturday, every single one of them had this young black man, Saka, on the front, singularly, not with the team, the English team, but Saka at England lost. And this one young man is being made, through the toxic British media, to carry the burden, to represent the face of defeat, setting him up to be blamed for England's failure at Euro 2024, if that should happen. So Saka is a young, talented footballer, a young black man. We must support him. And we must never allow our opinions to be eroded by deliberate and indiscriminate media bias. We must support Saka. Lewis Hamilton has put out a long statement on all of this. I suppose you can find it. We don't have time to go into it now. But have a look at that statement. And please, let us support this young man in Britain. The media, especially the print and digital media in Britain, is toxic. It is getting more so by the day because they are not challenged. They're not challenged. But we are not to allow our voices to be silenced because they are so powerful. We talk about media ownership a lot in this space, and we know that a lot of this media is owned by just 3 or so people. Lord Rothermere of the Daily Mail, which is really a piece of garbage. Then you have the Murdochs, Rupert Murdoch owning everything from Sky to Fox to the newspapers to TMZ to Page 6 to you name it. A lot of these outlets, media outlets, are owned by the very same person. You have about 3 or 4 people. And they have an agenda. And part of that agenda is to re-enslave and to disenfranchise and to unleash racism on black people and people of color all over the world. This is how they're doing it. And so you notice in Australia, you get the same kind of reporting that you get in the UK. And of course, it's seeping now into the United States more than ever because we see what happened with the Washington Post just last week. And we'll talk about that another time because I do have my guest holding. Let me take a quick break and come back. Thank you so much for joining us, or wherever you're joining us from this morning, from the 7 continents on the 107s, 107.1 all the way to 107.9, on the internet at irefm.net, on your IRFM mobile apps, however you're listening to us this morning on Flow Channel 822 or DigiPlay. Thank you so much for joining us inside of the Africa Forum. I know it's appointment radio, so hey, welcome Akwaba. We're going to go straight to the phone lines because my first guest for this morning is Jamaican international human rights lawyer and researcher Malaine Allain. And Malaine has been focusing in recent time, well, this is as human rights is our focus, but specifically looking at Haiti in recent times and the Haitians who have come into Jamaica, whether by boat, by sea, by however they're getting here, and how they've been treated. We've had many conversations with Malaine Allain about this, the human rights considerations. In recent times, we've had more Haitians coming in, And there are conversations on the ground about sending an army or police officers along with Kenya and others to further oppress the Haitians. Last week we spoke with a representative from the Haiti's Action Group who told us plainly and straightforward that they didn't want this. Is not what they wanted. They want to be able. What is happening is that they're being robbed of their agency, and the decisions are being made for them. So that's one other story. But here on the ground, we have Haitians who have come in by sea, by boat, and who are being housed. Some were sent back, but some are housed here on the island. I want to talk to our next guest, Melaine, about what's happening with those who are here. Melaine, good morning. Thank you so much for joining us as usual. Early in the morning this time.
Hi, good morning, KABU. Thanks for having me.
All right. Can you first of all give us an update, Melaine, as to what is the situation re Haitians now who have come in terms of how, do you know how many we have and where they are?
So according to our monitoring, Freedom Imaginaries monitoring, we have documented over 150 Haitians arriving by boat since July 2023. And disturbingly, over 90 Haitians collectively expelled, essentially, between September and December 2023. And those collective expulsions, as we've always said, violate international law obligations, including those under the Refugee Convention, and those obligations say they should have had access to an asylum procedure and an individualized assessment of their international protection needs.
And obviously, so for those, that didn't happen at all. Are you seeing a change in government's response, Jamaica's government's response to Haitians who are coming in, or do we still have some sent back by night?
I'm seeing what could be a shift, but I think it's too early to tell. Because, remember between July and December 2023, only one of the groups that came by boat was allowed to stay and request asylum, and that was the first group. But every other group that came in September, October, November, and December, the Haitians were rapidly returned without access to a lawyer, without access to an asylum procedure. And that's why we call them collective expulsions that are unlawful. But in May, another group came, and they were charged with illegal entry. They were initially denied access to counsel, which is consistent with part of what I'm now calling a Haitian refugee policy. They were denied access to legal counsel, but I made an application to the parish court, raised the issue of access to counsel, and orders and directives were given to the police authorities that they were to have access to counsel. And so that's why I say it's too early to tell whether there's a shift. But with this recent group, rather than being immediately expelled, they were, they're going through the criminal justice system, and, we have presented a request for asylum on behalf of some of them.
They are going through the criminal justice system. Haitians who are seeking refuge on this island we are putting them through the criminal justice system.
Yes, and that again is unlawful, and I just want to carefully explain what international law says. In a mixed migratory pattern, meaning we have people coming into Jamaica, some may be asylum seekers with legitimate claims, some may not be. Some may be victims of human trafficking, some may be unaccompanied children. When you have this mixed migratory pattern, it is absolutely essential to have a robust procedure for the individualized assessment of each case, so that those with legitimate claims can be processed according to the international refugee law framework. And those who, through that screening process, do not have claims are dealt with through another process. But what is happening in Jamaica, which is extremely concerning and unlawful under international law, is the collective wholesale designation of Haitians arriving in Jamaica as, I don't know, either undesirable or not eligible for that determination of refugee status, and, the collective expulsion on that basis, because not only is it discriminatory and unlawful under our own laws, it contravenes the international law framework for refugee protection and the guidance of the UN Refugee Agency, which says that the situation in Haiti is dire and not conducive to forced returns. and the UN Refugee Agency has called for a moratorium on forced return.
And then it also, I think, and correct me if I'm wrong, it conflicts with their own actions right now, where we have Canadian soldiers on the ground, I understand, training Jamaican police or soldiers, I don't know who they're training, to go to Haiti. In other words, there is an intervention into Haiti by an international body led by the UN and the core group and so on, a serious intervention. So doesn't it, because, and they've laid out why this is necessary, because according to them, the situation is dire. And doesn't this very same argument, or can't you use this very same argument to say those who are leaving are escaping from that same very dire situation that you are sending our training soldiers and police officers to go correct? Isn't that a conflict?
Absolutely. There's a conflict, and I would go even further. In one of the habeas corpus applications for a writ of habeas corpus that I did earlier this year, it was in the case of a Haitian who was deprived of liberty for months, even after having paid his fines for illegal entry and therefore completing his sentence. He was deprived of liberty unlawfully. And, in the arguments presented by the authorities, they said they were waiting to deport him but couldn't because the situation in Haiti is basically, it's a crisis, and, no planes were going into Port-au-Prince. And so we do have this inconsistency with, on the one hand, the government recognizing that the situation in Haiti is so catastrophic that they can't even implement deportation. But on the other hand, they're not treating Haitians who arrive to Jamaica as asylum seekers under the law, even though the international law and the refugee policy is very clear that all persons, asylum seekers are to have access to an asylum procedure.
It boggles the mind. In the meantime, what I know you have been raising the issue of how the treatment and the facilities where they're housed and so on, especially those in St. Mary. Since you've raised that, I think a few days now, if not a week and a half, maybe a little bit more, you've been talking about that. What's the situation now? And has there been any kind of intervention from anyone regarding the concerns you have?
Yes, KABU. Well, what we have on the ground is that the Haitian asylum seekers at Robins Bay have been there since July 2023. Their children do not have access to Jamaica's education system, which means that they have been out of school for almost 1 year now, and are being left behind at a crucial point in their development. The Haitians don't have, authorization or access to work. They are in a situation where they're in a state of limbo, and they're not allowed to live full, dignified lives because their asylum claims, there's such this huge delay in the final determination of their asylum claims. The claims were initially rejected in February. We have appealed the decision and are awaiting an outcome. But I just want to emphasize that under Jamaica's 2009 refugee policy, it states that even if the authorities determine that an applicant for refugee status is not eligible for refugee status, the authorities still can grant leave to stay on humanitarian grounds. And what that would mean is that at least for a period of time, they have access to basic necessities, like work, access to, medical treatment, and children can go to school. And so I would really urge the government, the asylum seekers at Robins Bay, when they initially came, they immediately, almost without delay, presented their request for asylum. They have been in Jamaica now, living, well. I'm sure the police officers there can attest to, what it's like living with these Haitians. They are extraordinarily talented. I mean, if you ever see what some of them produce in terms of craftsmanship, they're extremely talented masons, very bright. And I'm wondering, why would we keep them deprived of liberty rather than allow them to contribute their talents and their energy to Jamaica, and just live a full, dignified life? And so I would urge the government, take them out of the state of limbo. Let them live full, dignified lives. And for the children, that's a non-controversial point. Let them have access to education, because it's not Jamaican to have guests in our country live in the way these Haitians have been living.
Is the government aware of this? Are they, well, now I was going to say authorities, but is the government, the governing body, the Prime Minister and the Minister of welfare, who deals with welfare, social welfare, or Minister of Labor, are they aware of the conditions there? Because you are describing an emerging humanitarian crisis, if not a humanitarian crisis, because you're looking at a year from July to July. I mean, that's a year of young children being deprived access to education. And obviously you've laid out what's happening with the adults. But I just want to spend some time on the children. A year out of school, a year denied access to education by any standard. That is a vulgar situation. It's a humanitarian crisis, isn't it?
It is a humanitarian crisis, and I want to say that there is no, well, as far as I am aware, in terms of the Haitian asylum seekers that I represent, there is no child right now who has access to education. And the authorities must know this because, one, it is the subject of litigation right now. In terms of the Robins Bay asylum seekers, that is one of the crucial points in the litigation, and so they are aware of it. But as I said, it's not just Robins Bay. You know, we have other children who were, you know, callously separated from their parents who are have been charged with illegal entry and placed in homes around Jamaica. Those children aren't being educated either. And in that case, it was particularly harsh because those children actually spent days in a lockup. And
in which country, Malaine?
Well, that is my question. It couldn't be my country, but it is. It is my country.
In Jamaica?
And in this country, Jamaica, I found a 10-month-old baby and other young children in a police lockup in extremely deplorable conditions. And it is a humanitarian crisis because this simply isn't who. It's unlawful under the law, obviously. I mean, that's a non-controversial point. And it's just not who we are. And so at some point, this situation is spiraling out of control. And at some point, all Jamaicans, members of the legal fraternity, faith-based organization, civil society, we all have to come together and say, this is simply not acceptable for Jamaica. We cannot be a country that places children in detention. We cannot be a country that denies access to education for young children for no reason, really. And so I want to urge the government, you know, let's work together in solidarity. You know, it is my job to put a spotlight on these injustices, but it doesn't mean that we can't work together and find these non-controversial issues to move forward on, and then let the courts settle, you know, the what you deem to be complex issues. And in my view, this question of children and families, that should be a non-controversial issue that we can work out together. And so I always extend a hand in partnership and solidarity and good faith in trying to find a solution to what is a humanitarian crisis.
You tell us?
Pardon me?
No, I'm shocked, you know. I'm trying to just get over what I'm hearing. Because we're looking at Palestine, we're looking at children dying, we're looking at babies dying, and we're looking at Congo and Sudan, and we're looking at babies dying and so on. And but right here on the ground in Jamaica, we're putting 10-month-old babies in detention, in lockup, and we have children in less than ideal situation, who our guests were housing because there is a crisis in Haiti, who we have denied education. We have adults who we have denied access to work and work with their hands because they can't do that. So for me, I'm just trying to absorb this. And where do we go from here with this, though? What about the orphans who came in recently? Do you know what has happened with them? Because they came in on the instructions of, I think, maybe the United States. So that's a different situation.
Yes, that's a different situation. And all I would say on that situation is that we have a sizable group of Haitian children in Jamaica. We know what the Constitution says about how they are to be cared for. They are entitled to special measures of protection. We know what the Child Care and Protection Act says in terms of the principle of the best interest of the child and the elements and principles that go into that consideration. And so I would say all authorities in Jamaica with a mandate for the protection of children should be focused on the situation of children, whether it's 59 or the others in children's homes separated from their parents. I mean, think of a 10-month-old baby, and the baby is breastfeeding, separated from his nursing mother. Because each day that passes, that baby is necessarily suffering extreme harm, So I would tell all authorities to be actively engaged on that issue and to ensure that Jamaica, ceases to be the country that places children, Haitian asylum-seeking children, in situations of harm.
And this can be worked out in so many ways, especially when you talk about the education, because I see lots of questions coming in about Haitians speaking French and how would you integrate them into school. But we have language centers, we have international schools on the island, we have teachers who can be or they can be placed in areas where teachers who speak French can do that. Plus, a lot of them have been on the island for a year now. They would have picked up somewhat here and there. And we know how international schools work. So I'm answering it myself. But you would have looked at this yourself, Melaine, because this is one of the things you're asking for them to, for the children to have access, some of the children to have access to education. And so many questions coming in about the language barrier. Your own thinking on it?
It's a non-issue. I mean, honestly, KABU, I would have given anything to have foreign language students in my school in Jamaica growing up, because it would have immediately given a benefit to me in terms of exposure. And there are processes and methodologies for integrating foreign speaking students in a school. It's a non-issue, and there are experts who can deal with that. And so it's actually a benefit. I mean, I just want to say, KABU, our instinctive reaction to Haitians so far is to categorize them as one of two things. Either they're criminals, coming to Jamaica to wreak havoc, or, there are these downtrodden people who are in need of our help. But in interacting with the Robins Bay Haitian asylum seekers, there's so much more than that, and they can actually contribute to our society. Yeah. These Haitian Creole-speaking children can actually contribute to our schools, and so let's look at Haitians as, the beautiful, talented, resilient people that they are. In every society, you will have, criminal elements. In every society, you'll have good people. So let us see them as human beings. Let us recognize their humanity, and let us stop what some public officials have been engaged in, which is the stigmatization of Haitians. Yes. That's not who we are.
Exactly. All right. So, if you were to speak directly to the Prime Minister right now, what would be your main point to him?
Well, my main point would be, first, stop detaining vulnerable Haitian asylum seekers and children. And the second point would be that, Jamaica has always been a leader on the international stage, at the regional stage. And so I can't understand why we aren't leading on this issue of the Haitian refugee crisis. I have seen what we can do when we come to agreement. And so, for example, we have 3 interim injunctions in place, restraining the government from returning certain claimants, Haitian asylum seekers, to Haiti. And this was done through consent of the parties. And I'm asking myself, what more could we achieve if we agree on certain non-controversial issues and let the courts deal with, other issues that you deem to be too complex? And so I would tell the Prime Minister, let us find those non-controversial issues and let us be a leader on the regional and international stage in terms of the Haitian refugee crisis. Establish reception facilities for Haitian asylum seekers. We know there's an influx. It's time to establish proper reception facilities. Establish a robust asylum procedure and their international standards and experts who can assist, including the UN Refugee Agency, and stop this wholesale collective expulsion of Haitians and allow them to access an asylum procedure. That would be my message.
Malayan, thank you so much for the work that you're doing. We need to speak off air, I think, to figure out how even us here at IRFM what we can do. Thank you so much, my sister, and we'll keep in touch. Please let us know how this unfolds.
Thank you so much, KABU.
All right. Great work from Elaine there, Jamaican international human rights lawyer and researcher. Her organization is called Freedom Imaginaries. She's been doing some serious human rights work as an attorney, and a lot of this pro bono. I'm saying it Malayan because it is what it is, on the island here in Jamaica. And she's made a call for Jamaican attorneys, for whether you're Jamaican, whether you're on the island or not, for attorneys, at civil society, the church, just human beings on this island, to look around you and see what's happening. They are distracting us right now with this discussion about, who have British citizenship and Jamaica citizenship, and who have relationship with the Prime Minister or not, and who is sleeping with who. In Jamaica, the national conversation right now, two things dominating the national conversation: whether or not an MP is sleeping with the Prime Minister, whether or not the Prime Minister's wife is talking to the MP. And then there's another national conversation started on TikTok, whether or not people from Guyana eat shark, or, I say what I say. But, so this is the situation. This is when Jamaica and Guyana at it, and there's some say it is joke and some say it is not joke. What kind of foolishness is this? What kind of foolishness is it? It's like Nero. We're twiddling our thumbs while Rome is burning. This is ridiculous. This is ridiculous. And they are distracting us on the other hand, distracting us with a conversation now about whether the Commonwealth, people with Commonwealth citizenship can sit in the House of Parliament or can be a Prime Minister. You said that they could. Right? You said they could. That was the last discussion. Now you're changing the Constitution. That is all fine. But that's a distraction. That's a distraction. That is a distraction. Remember, me tell you that. That's a distraction. So these three things dominating the national conversation right now is just, let me just take a deep breath and vibrate at a different frequency. I cannot afford to get angry. We have so many of our brothers and sisters from Haiti on the island here in Jamaica. So many who have already been sent back. And those who are here, so many in inhumane conditions. Children being detained in lockup as young as 10 months old, we're hearing. That is like Israel and Palestine. That's a kind of the same mentality that's killing the children in Palestine is the same mentality that's putting a 10-month-old in lockup. It is what it is. And we deal with the isness of things. Popularly known as Timo Media, Pan-African and geopolitical analyst, spreading positivity and connecting the black race one at a time. Al-Hassan Timothy reports on important news, which in his perspective is ignored or deliberately being used to mislead the public to achieve geopolitical interest. And his aim, he tells us all the time, is to inspire and empower African men and women around the world. And issues in a global perspective, global issues from a Pan-African perspective. So we want to talk this morning with Al-Hassan Timothy. We're standing by for him about Russia-Africa relations, Russia in Africa. Vladimir Putin said in 2013 that there is no doubt that Africa, along with Asia, the Middle East, and Latin America, will take its worthy place in the new multipolar world order. The new multipolar world order. And finally free itself from the bitter legacy of colonialism and neocolonialism, rejecting its modern practices. That's Vladimir Putin. Standing by to speak with Al-Hassan Timothy. Not quite sure what's happening there. If you tell me, I'll know what to do. Do we have him? Do we have Al Hassan? All right, so I hope, so we're going to do this again, right? We're trying to do this again. All right, so let me see what happens here. Trying to do this best we can. My brother, good morning, Timo. How you doing? Hello? All right, but that's what's up. All right. Are you hearing me? It's all plugged in and everything? Are you hearing me, my brother? No, let me do this off air. Are you hearing me now, Timo?
Yeah, I can hear you.
Okay, that's brilliant. You're loud and clear. And this is what happens when you get the engineer on the phone line. Thank you so much, Mr. Wisdom. Hang up. Could you hang up briefly? Sometimes we just need to get over ourselves and call the engineer. You know.
Exactly.
Yes. So,
that's not a problem. You know.
Can I tell you, it was a very simple issue, by the way. You know. But,
yeah.
I won't even go into it. Anyway, you know, how you doing, my brother?
I'm doing good. Whatever you're on the line is full of fun. In fact, to be honest with you.
Yes. Thank you so much for taking the time. I know you're pretty busy, so thank you for taking the time.
No problem.
So we've been looking on with for those of us like yourself who are looking at global issues through a Pan-African lens. That I know, and I've been watching your social media, your vlogs and your TikTok commentaries and so on. Just biting into what's happening, because these are pretty interesting times for the continent of Africa. Before so we're going to be talking about Russia-Africa relations this morning. But before we go there, I want to speak quickly, if you don't mind, about Russia-Caribbean relations for a minute or two. Because you should be, I'm sure you're watching and hearing what's happening.
Yeah.
Right. So put that in perspective for me, because we understand that Russian ships are either due to enter the Caribbean waters heading for Cuba, or they're already within the waters heading for Cuba. Contextualize that for me. What is the reason for that from your perspective?
Okay. I think Russia's interest is simple. One of the main reasons why they are heading towards Cuba is because of the Ukraine war. Because they are trying to tell America that if you can play in our backyard, we can equally play in your backyard. And if you look at the history between Cuba and Russia under Fidel Castro, it's nothing new. Mm-hmm. You know, if you look at Cuba is a communist country. One might argue that it's a socialist country, but we all know that communism and socialism share a whole lot of things in common. Mm-hmm. But they are trying to just send a message to America. I don't think it's a big deal. I think it's just a message that they are trying to send to America. We all know in the Cold War, that was exactly what happened. Mm-hmm. America stationed their weapons in Turkey, aiming at Moscow. Mm-hmm. And the Russians decided to strike a deal with Fidel Castro in Cuba, and they also stationed their weapons in Cuba, aiming at all the 50 states in America. Mm-hmm. So this is the same thing. We are back to the Cold War. If you could remember, Samara, the last time I spoke to you, you asked me that is this the continuation of is this Third World War? Mm-hmm. And I said no. Mm-hmm. I see this as the continuation of the Cold War. Mm-hmm. Because I see Cold War tactics here. That is the same strategy. That is exactly what happened in Cold War. Mm-hmm. And that is what they are doing again. Mm-hmm. Yes. Yeah, so that is what I see.
So it's not so you're not seeing this as an escalation, a provocation, because we see provocation from both sides. So we see the U.S. provoking Russia, but the U.S. has taken this provocation to another level, because they have said now, along with NATO, to Ukraine, that these long-range weapons that you have, that we have given to you, we're also giving you permission to use those long-range weapons inside of Russia. So that's an escalation, isn't it? And our understanding is that Ukraine has already done so. Am I right?
Yes. They did that way back, even at the beginning of the war. They did that. They did that in Angles. I don't know how many of you remember. Right in 2022, Ukraine struck deep inside Angles Air Base, and Angles Air Base is a strategic air base which is hosting Russian nuclear weapons strategically meant for America. So America helped Ukraine to strike Angles Air Base, but they couldn't succeed. And they are doing it again. Yes, you're right.
So,
you're right.
So Russia's response to that, talk to me about that, because we see two things being played out. Obviously, the ships, there are questions as to whether or not there are nuclear ships armed, because we hear Cuba has come out and said, well, no nuclear weapons on board. And Russia has also said the same thing. But we know that is a conversation that's happening in the U.S. now, because I've just, this morning watched one of the mainstream media reports on this issue, talking about the fact that, nuclear weapons are this is a discussion that they're having, and whether or not Russia sending nuclear weapons to Cuba. So even within their conversation, they have that. And then on the other hand, we have the long range weapon situation, where how is Russia responding to that latest directive from the US and NATO to Ukraine re the long range weapons?
Yeah. Okay. About the nuclear weapons, this is one thing that I think is too early for all of us to know. If we go back to the Cold War era, the Russians, when they were sending weapons to Cuba, they didn't tell anybody. They didn't tell anybody that they were sending nuclear weapons. So I think, one, they are trying to escape sanctions when it comes to Cuba. They don't want a situation, they don't want to put Cuba in a worse situation. Cuba is already in a worse situation, so they don't want to add more salt to injury. So I think they are being strategic here. If they're sending nuclear weapons, what I want everybody to understand is they are not going to tell the Americans, and they are going to deny that they are not sending nuclear weapons. But in actual fact, they are sending nuclear weapons, because they are sending even their submarines. Submarines are not meant for, small weapons launching. They are meant to launch nuclear weapons. So why are they sending submarines to Cuba? I mean, so
right.
It's too early on that.
And here we're talking about the Caribbean waters, because how close we are in Cuba. Here in Jamaica, we can stay where my parents are from in St. Mary. We can literally, if we go up high on the hill, we can see Cuba across the sea. That's how close we are to Cuba. And so you're talking about all of this happening now in the Caribbean waters. And I know Jamaican people and Caribbean people are a little bit tense about this. I've seen people on the social media, with a lot of comedic pieces. But at the same time, there is a bit of tension, because we have been here before, and Jamaica was made to make a choice. And the resistance to that choice, because Jamaica was going the route of socialism, the resistance to that choice, we have not come back from that. The punishment that was unleashed on us by the United States as a result. So we watch and see where that is going. Do you think that Russia will give long-range weapons to, say, Yemen or Hezbollah or anyone else in the region, if America continues and France continue this nonsense about giving Ukraine long-range weapons?
Yes, that is another way of fighting. They could do that. They are masters of proxies. They've done that before. Again, during the Cold War, the same thing was done in Vietnam. The Russians supported a lot of proxy wars to fight against the Americans. The whole of the African continent, they were giving us weapons to fight against them. So it's also another way of fighting America. But let me deal with that particular topic that you're talking about. America sending weapons to Ukraine, especially long-range weapons to fire deep inside Russia. Now, there are two ways for the Russians to fight that. Now, this is major escalation. If you look at the neocons and globalists in America, they have no reverse gear. When they start something, unless you defeat them, they will never stop. That is who they are. Now, the Russians will either push the Ukrainians back on the battlefield to a point whereby they cannot launch these long-range weapons deep inside Russia. That is another way. In the beginning of the war, they did that. If you guys remember, back in the days, it was only Crimea. And they started giving them weapons that could cross Crimea into Russia. And the Russians decided to push them back all the way to Kherson, Liman, Zaporizhia. That is what they did at the beginning of the war. In the middle of the war, that was what they did. When they give them long-range weapons, the Russians push them back. So I think the Russians are going to push them more back because it's just major escalation that they want. I think that is what the United States want. They want to involve the Baltic countries. They want to involve NATO, but they wouldn't be on the battlefield. That is exactly what they want to do because the United States is very good in using other countries to fight their proxy wars or fight their wars or use other countries as proxy. Now, if you look at the war which is ongoing right now, United States is not involved. Their soldiers are not on the ground. They are only providing weapons. And they want to use these Baltic countries. And the Baltic countries are quite smarter than that. I don't think any country in the Baltic will ever get themselves involved. No Romania, no Moldova. No, I don't think they'll ever get themselves involved. It is a major escalation. It is a provocation. But I think the Russians can hold on to that. They wouldn't rush. They did that in the Second World War. Finland supported the Germans in the Second World War. But the Russians didn't go there. They didn't enter Finland. No. After the, the Winter War, Finland started supporting, Germany to attack the Russians, but Russia never went back to Finland to attack them. So I know there's a major escalation. I know that it is a provocation, but looking at all the odds, I don't see the Russians, firing weapons into NATO territories for now. No, right. You're not going to do that.
We're watching this closely, and of course, I know that this is something that is your specialty and that you're also watching. And I carried you wide off base, but not so wide. We're going to take a quick break, and when we come back, we go to our main topic, which is looking now at, they're all connected, looking at Russia, Africa-Russia relations. Let's take a quick break. Popularly known as Timo Media. Remember, you can follow him on the social media at Timo Media. Really some deep analysis, especially through our own Pan-African perspective, looking at global issues through a Pan-African lens. Timo, so let's go to Russia-Africa relations. Obviously, we see just recently, I think just last week or so, if they're not still there, a high-level delegation from Russia going into parts of Africa, various countries in Africa. But Russia and Africa have had relations over time. We saw this this picked up in 2019 at the Sochi Africa Summit in Sochi. But the relationship goes way back. Let's start there. Historically, what kind of relationship has Russia had with countries on the continent of Africa?
I know. A lot of people in the Caribbean keep cautioning Africa to be careful of Russia. All superpowers are in for their interest, of course. And as a policymaker, every policymaker, one of your main interests is to look at anybody coming to your country. What are their interests? Does their interest actually collide with our interest? And I would say yes. So from a historical point, Russia-Africa relationship didn't start today. It started way back after Second World War. It was after Second World War that the Russians asked United States and all Western colonizers that why are they still colonizing other countries? It started from UN, after the formation of UN. So Russia started the agitating of other countries' independence, like the Caribbean, Africa, Southeast Asia, right from UN, for Western Europeans and United States to give everybody independence. Though United States never colonized any country, but we all know that United States is an extension of the UK. So today, if you look at United States, if United States asks UK to jump, UK will ask hi. There is a joke in the UK. That is how they they joke about it.
It is exactly how it is.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
So so Russia asked them to give everybody independence, and they refused. And that was when the Vietnam War started. And another, yes, in Second World War, the British went to the Caribbean, they went to Southeast Asia, Africa, and promised us that if we help them fight Second World War, they'll give us independence. And after Second World War, they refused to give us independence. And that was when Vietnam War started. That is where the first Vietnam War with France started from.
And that context I think is very important when we are discussing these kinds of issues, isn't it?
Exactly, because people have to understand where the whole thing started from. Right? So it started from the independence, and later they refused to give us, and Russia came in. The first country to gain independence was Ghana, right? And that happens to be in Ghana. Aside from Dr. Kwame Nkrumah, started agitating for Ghana independence. Britain, France, together with Belgium, all of them were against Ghana independence. Even the CIA wrote a letter to Queen Elizabeth that he shouldn't give Ghana independence. If he give Ghana independence, the rest of the continent will start agitating for independence, and eventually they have to give every country independence. Now look at a small country like Ghana. By then, Ghana population was even less than even 7 million. A small country. And all these superpowers were against Ghana. And Russia decided to step in. Under Khrushchev, I don't know how many of you remember Khrushchev, Soviet Union president, after the death. Yes, after Stalin, he came. So Khrushchev decided to, send the Red Army, which they were all Russian soldiers. He provided security for Nkrumah to continue fighting for the independence, because Nkrumah had already survived 2 assassination attempts by the Americans and British. So they stepped in, and Ghana gained our independence, and they continue to provide Ghana with independence from 1957, till Nkrumah government was overthrown. By 1958, they also provided security and also, started the likes of Angola, the likes of Guinea-Conakry, all these countries. The Russians started sending their soldiers. The Russians started helping all these countries to gain their independence. So this is where Africa-Russia relationship started from. Our relationship with Russia is not mainly economic; it is mainly military. That is our relationship started from.
And another important country, I think, in this conversation has to be Congo and Patrice Lumumba, who was denied support, military support and other kinds of support from the United Nations and the United States, and then was forced to go to Russia. But that once he went to Russia and Russia came in, they killed him. And quelled that revolutionary spirit in the Congo. They have not come back from that yet also. So this is the extent to which the ongoing Cold War has also been played itself out, I think, on the continent of Africa. We hear Vladimir Putin talk about setting Africa free from the bitter legacy of colonialism and neocolonialism, but saying at the same time that doing so without interfering. China said the very same thing, that they would not interfere. They would come in, they wouldn't interfere. It didn't take long for China to interfere in Sudan. And I'm sure there are other levels of interference, so we can go through that another time. But is there a similarity, you think, to some extent, between how China has entered or re-entered, escalated its own presence on the continent of Africa, and how Russia is now also, ramping up its own strategic relationships with Africa?
Okay, as an analyst and somebody who study African history, I rather prefer Russia relationship far better than China. But China is a force to reckon with, whether you like it or not. You can't do away with China. China relationship with Africa is focused on economic relationship, not military relationship. And the Russian relationship is focused on military. There is a big difference between, when the Russians started coming to Africa back in the 50s, 60s, and 70s. There's a big difference. Now the Russians have decided to add a bit economic relationship to their relationship with Africa. They provide economic support to some African countries. Mm-hmm. So even last year, the Russians, wrote off over 20 billion debt for Africa free. All the money that African countries went to the Russians and borrowed, Russia decided to forgive us. Mm-hmm. So they are trying to win us back. After the collapse of the USSR, Russia lost their foothold in Africa. So it was 2014 that the Russians started coming back. So they are trying very hard to win us back. And it's a gradual process, but I think they are still getting a foothold here. Mm-hmm. A lot of countries trust the Russians. The Russians can be trusted. There's one thing about the Russians. Mm-hmm. The Russians don't lie. When they have a relationship with you, their relationship is based on value, not just interest. Mm-hmm. And the Russians also benefit from Africa relationship. If Africa is free, Russia become more powerful. That is one thing I want everybody to understand about Russia's relationship with Africa. If you look at the whole of Western Europe, this is where they make all their money from. Most of their money is through the exploitation of African continent. Mm-hmm. And no matter how the Russians fight Western Europe and America, they can never defeat them because there is always enough money for Western Europe and America in Africa to get. Mm-hmm. So they want to set Africa free to the point that Africa becomes free from Western Europe and America. If Africa is free from Western Europe and America, then Western Europe have no option than to bow down to Russia. Mm-hmm. That is how I see the whole thing.
All right. I'm going to take another break. Right. But when we come back, I want to look at how then does Africa ensure that it has, and I know it's various countries, but that the relationship that this new era of relationship between Africa-Russia relations, that they ensure that Africa maintains its autonomy, its sovereignty, and that they don't fall in the European or the American trap. Because this is what Africa is freeing itself from. But then we see Russia on the one hand, we see China on another hand. So let me take a break, and we'll come back, we'll look at that. My special guest online, Timo Media, we're looking at Africa-Russia relations. This is something that we see really taking a new turn over the last few years. Sochi in 2019 was one thing. We saw the discussions and the decisions coming out of there. Some of the decisions included expanding the network of Russian embassies and trade missions in Africa, securing in the words of Putin, securing and a better structure for economic relations, making them more dynamic. But as you're hearing from Timo Media, right now, the reality of the Russia-Africa relations really based more in military. But we see where it's obvious to me, Timo, that Vladimir Putin has wider ambitions in terms of how Russia engages with Africa. He's talking about a new multipolar world order where he says major countries of economic and political power and influence are emerging in the world. And he sees these countries asserting themselves more and more and more demanding also. And he sees Africa as integral in all of that and Africa-Russia relations. But how does Africa remain, remain is one thing, but how does Africa protect its sovereignty and its agency and does not fall back in the kind of relationships it had with France and the United States and the European Union?
Yeah, okay. Like I said, if you look at the Russia relationship with Africa, it's mainly military. I'm very skeptical about China relationship with Africa more than Russia. Because Russia don't really have any deep economic relationship with Africa in any way. Mm-hmm. And if you look at the Russian economy, it's just like Africa economy. If you study the Russian economy very well, you know that Russian economy is commodity based. It's based on resources, it's based on their oil. It's based on their natural resource, and the same thing happens in Africa here. Mm-hmm. So we kind of like have the same economic relationship. Or we kind of like have the same economy. Our economy is driven by our resource. So having an economic relationship with Russia, you're not going to benefit that much, especially African countries. The Russians, if you look across Africa here, their economic relationship with us is about nuclear energy. For instance, in Burkina Faso, currently they are building nuclear energy. In Niger, they are also building nuclear energy. In Ghana, back in the Cold War, they did the same thing. They built nuclear energy in Ghana. In the likes of Angola, they did the same thing. So their relationship with Africa economically is not that much, you know.
Is Russia? Let me ask it this way, because we see where there some Eastern African countries have already kicked out France, and obviously more. We see the trajectory that Senegal is taking, and we like what we see happening in Senegal. So the question then is it, to what extent is Africa moving away from the colonial France, which is insidious? I don't think anything can get worse than that. And replacing those relationships, we see that some countries have also kicked out the United States. Replacing those relationships with Russia, do you think? Is Russia the viable option for those countries?
Well, the whole thing is very complicated. I wish, or all of us in Africa wish, kicking out United States, we wouldn't replace anybody. Like, we should be independent. That is what we wish, but our hands are tied at our back, and it's kind of like very difficult to do that on our own because we don't have the ammunition to do that. We don't want neither Russia, China, America, or France, or anybody. If you ask an African, that is what the person will tell you. But the reality is quite different. If you look at the reality, we have no option. And we usually, the Russian-African relationship is quite better, far better than, the relationship we have with the West and America. For example, in Niger, we were selling a ton of uranium. That is the major export of Niger. And France was buying a ton of uranium for 85 cents a ton of uranium. And the world market was around 250 euros. So this is purely robbery. And when the Russians stepped in, we were able to kick out France. And today, we are selling our uranium at the world market price. So what else could we ask for again? And today, if you look at Niger, Niger is not at the mercy of aid. Back in the days, Niger was at the mercy of aid. Unless France give them aid, before everything, unless they give them aid, no electricity, nothing, whilst France was taking uranium to their country, and they were powering their nuclear plants with, this uranium from Africa. But this time around, we've been able to stop that. We are building our own nuclear energy. We don't rely on France. Neither do we rely on Russia to give us electricity. The most important thing with Africa-Russia relationship is we don't want to rely on them for anything.
And that's the point. That's exactly where I want to go with this, is the extent to which Africa is relying or not. But on Russia. But I've heard you say we don't want to rely on them. But you've also said we have no option. Is it no option to rely, or is Africa in a place? Is there enough power, which I think there is, to negotiate in a different way with Russia from France, the United States, the European Union, and from China? Because a massive mistake was made by all African countries in their negotiations with China using that Angola model. And that China rolled out the Angola model across the continent of Africa. It worked for them, and they rolled out the very same model here in the Caribbean. We are paying for it also. So how do they avoid that pitfall with Russia? Is there enough power, or do they feel, because the power is there in the minerals, do we feel on the continent of Africa that we have enough power to negotiate as equal partners?
Yes, again, when I talk about the negotiation with, when I say we have no option, I'm talking in terms of military terms. We don't have the weapons, and no country on earth here, of course, have these weapons more than the Russians, not even the Chinese. The Chinese are equally struggling to even build their own military. I mean, I know a lot of people are saying the Chinese, yeah, they are doing it, but they are not yet up to United States and Russia. So in military terms that I'm talking about, we don't have the option. Now in Mali, for instance, in base 101 in Niamey, United States refused to leave. And Niamey had no option than to sign a defense contract with the Russians to rather bring in the Russians. Now, if you look at the Russians, they're not going around building military bases across Africa. But United States do. How are we going to kick out the United States with all these military bases? It becomes very difficult for us to do that with any country or on our own. We don't have the weapons, and there is no way the United States is going to sit and watch we Africans produce weapons to come and kick them out. That is not going to work. They will do everything to sabotage that particular relationship or building of weapons on our own. So at this particular point, the best option for us has become the Russians, and the Russians also stand to benefit from this relationship. They are not just kicking out the United States, they are also fighting against their enemy. They can never defeat the United States in Ukraine. You can't defeat the United States in Ukraine. That is totally impossible. You can kick out the United States, but United States will come back because of Africa. So the Russian-Africa relationship in terms of military is not just benefiting Africa. We know this. We are not stupid. They are also benefiting from the relationship. Because if they are able to defeat or kick United States out of Africa, they become free. They don't have to deal with United States again. They've been fighting the Western America, way back at the time of, Catherine the Great, under Napoleon. They've been fighting America, but they've never been able to kick out the West and America completely out.
Right.
And it's because of Africa. And that is why Khrushchev realized that in order for them to defeat the West, then Africa must be free. So they also benefit from the relationship with Africa.
Of course.
So on that note, I think they also benefit from that. And we don't actually have any tight economic relationship with Russia that will actually put our heads in the guillotine. I don't see it that way. And
but isn't this
military-wise, they don't have any military bases.
Okay. But isn't this the long-term strategy of Russia, though? Because if you listen to Vladimir Putin, it seems to me as if the long-term strategy is exactly what we're saying we don't have right now, which is military, economic, socioeconomic, and he has laid this out: mining, high technologies, geological exploration. You talk about fuel and energy, nuclear power, chemical industry, transportation, engineering, agriculture, of course, and fisheries. So this is a long-term plan coming out of Sochi in 2019, but also coming out of the last Africa-Russia summit, which took place in Moscow, which was 2023.
Exactly.
Where does that? Well, listen, and this is for my own looking at this through a Pan-African lens, right? For my own. My own perspective, and we are entitled to a Pan-African opinion. This is what we say in this space. Is that I agree with you that because of what the situation is continentally right now, that globally and the relationships that Africa is having with all of these different blocs, whether it's the US or European Union or NATO or whoever, that Russia is the least dangerous right now, if you ask me. So I do agree with you, and this is why I'm looking at this so closely. I looked very closely at China-Africa relations. I knew that was going to be bad, and it is turning out that way. I'm also looking at Russia-Africa relations now and saying, if what we're seeing, all of the discussions coming out of the different Russia-Africa summit, if people sign off on these, and if it goes this way, then obviously this is the best option for Africa in terms of even protecting itself from exploitation and neocolonialism. But at the same time, I think the challenge is, how do you keep your sovereignty? Can you say do you have any idea what happened last week with Lavrov and them who were going around Africa. I didn't pay a close attention in terms of the discussion.
Yeah, that was Lavrov and Prigozhin. He's dead and gone, so we can't talk about him now.
Is he really dead? Didn't I see a picture of him the other day?
I mean, the whole lot is going on, but we can't find him. The man is dead. I mean, it's not conspiracy theories.
So the man is dead. Okay. So what was the reason for that high level delegation that went into East Africa and parts of West Africa 2 weeks ago?
Yeah.
What was
of course, it's all about having a foothold in Africa. Russia still doesn't yet have a foothold in Africa. That is a fact.
Right.
Our 50 countries, trust me, Russia have foothold in just less than even 5 African countries. Yes. The rest is they are still purchasing, and let me put it that way. United States still have a good relationship with most of the African countries, which is slavery. Let me put it that way. They still colonize most of these countries, and it's not going to be an easy fight. About long-term relationship with Russia. Permit me to quote Lumumba. Lumumba said, "When we get to the river, we will cross." So we have to wait on that.
Yes.
For now, it's better we fight than to just sit. I mean, nothing is going to change. I mean, we will never get these weapons on our own. Neither can we mobilize on our own to fight. And for the whole of African continent to come together and fight, it's totally impossible. We have a lot of traitors in our midst, and that makes it very difficult for we Africa.
Yes.
You see, I don't actually fear outside enemies like our internal enemies. If we look across this continent, our own people are the main problem. Betraying the continent in many ways.
Yes.
So I think for now, we have no option. Or it's better we fight now than to sit. When we get to the bridge, we will cross. Let us get to the bridge when the time comes. That generation also find a way to deal with Russia. Let's put it that way.
Yes. And as you talk about the betrayal within, we're looking at two things now. We're looking at the call for a government of national unity in South Africa. I know lots of people seemed, I think we're on the same page in that I wasn't shocked at all that South Africans didn't really vote in large numbers for the EFF. There was no surprises there. And then over in Congo, the DRC, that whole business is also one of betrayal and the involvement of Rwanda on the one hand, but also what's happening internally in Congo. Can you talk about that in a minute within the context you just raised, which is to say we should be very concerned about what's happening internally among us, the betrayal among us, and how that's impacting our ability to even negotiate as equals.
Exactly. I mean, in terms of Rwanda, the DRC, it's a very complex, situation, and it requires time to explain. The issue about Rwanda, let me just simplify it. Rwanda refused to take refugees from DRC, but rather accepted to take refugees from the UK. To simplify the whole thing.
Exactly.
I mean, if you look at the borders in Africa, when the Europeans were carving our borders, they didn't put our tribe, our kingdoms into consideration. So sometimes they carve through some kingdoms. So if you go to every African border, you realize that back in the days, both countries, they were one kingdom. And it's generating a whole lot of problems. So if you look at the border between Rwanda and the DRC, they were all Tutsi people. So if you look at Eastern Congo and Eastern Rwanda, all of them are one people. They speak the same language. They are Tutsi people. So when the Europeans were carving the borders, they didn't put the tribes into consideration. They just carved through them. And during the 1999 genocide, the Tutsi people from Rwanda ran to the DRC and they settled in Eastern DRC. And now DRC is asking them to go back to Rwanda. And they say they cannot go back because they've given birth in DRC. They have all their family, their properties, everything is now in Rwanda. In DRC. They can't go back to Rwanda. So this is the whole issue between the West and East. If you go to DRC right now, the biggest war in DRC is between DRC citizens. It's not between any European. There's no European in the DRC fighting anybody. Can you believe that there is not even a single European fighting against anybody in the DRC? They've managed to set us against each other, and we are fighting about each other in the DRC.
And that's the bottom line, is that they've managed, they're able still to set us against each other. And all they need are a few mercenaries to set us against each other, and here we are fighting killing each other in the worst kind of ways possible. And as you pointed out to us, and I think it is well said when you said that Rwanda refused to take refugees from the DRC, but Rwanda is taking refugees from the UK. What's interesting about that is the UK is going to the elections on July 4, and Sunak is about to lose, and he's going to lose bad. And part of this also has, well, it's a complex situation, but a big part of this is this immigrant situation and this deal he made with Rwanda. So it's interesting to see how that works out. In South Africa, we have a situation developing. We're going to link with South Africa immediately in another 5 minutes as we wrap up from you.
They betray us. They betray all of us. South Africa betray all of us. I mean, they will definitely paint it white. They will say that, they didn't vote for, but it's a lie. They voted for, that MK guy. Yes. Now, MK have a stronghold now. Now, you see that the government go in coalition with MK. That is very dangerous. I mean, if you talk with them, you will find out what is happening.
You mean with the DA?
With the DA, sorry. I'm talking about DA. Sorry. Yes. I know that's the most dangerous situation. And this is why when you talk about a betrayal that is happening before our eyes, because what do you think about this call for a government of national unity? Isn't that more in favor of the DA than it is for anyone? The white man will never go for crumbs. The white man will go for the whole bread. And if South Africans want us to remind them, we will remind them of how all of us in Africa here stood by them, supported them, and how we ended apartheid. There is no way that a black man and white man will ever have equal rights in a country. You will always be second-class citizens. Today, as I speak to you, ask any South African about Johannesburg. South Africans are still treated like second-class citizens in Johannesburg. And here they are talking about national unity. National unity with who? You have.
Yes.
Okay.
No, go ahead.
Yeah. You have South Africans who think that the blacks or other African immigrants in South Africa is their main problem. But if you go to South Africa, 80% of the country total resource and wealth is controlled by 20% of the Europeans in that country. If the Europeans think, or if they think that, they should unite or national unity is important, why are the Europeans not giving up their 80% wealth? Why are they against EFF? Because when EFF said they want to take this lands and distribute it equally, they're against the EFF. So if they believe in national or equal right, then I think the whole South Africa should have voted for, Malema.
For Malema.
Malema said exactly that.
And yet we see Malema even coming out less than he thought, I think, because and I think for him it might be a bit of a shock. I think he expected at least 11%. At a 9%, it is what it is. But here we are, and we're watching closely. So I think we'll have this conversation with you again. What's unfolding in South Africa? We saw this coming. The writing was on the wall. I remember asking this question in this space 10 years ago. This is our 10 years ago. I asked this question about the DA. About the DA, and here we are. So let us see where this takes us. Thank you so much, my brother. As usual, it is such a pleasure talking to you. I like the fact that you have carried this analysis to the social media spaces, so you're reaching a wide audience in terms of demographics and psychographics. How can we reach you? How can we find you on the social media?
Okay, on Facebook kicked me out of their platform because of Israel, so I mean that place is not no problem.
I understand. I understand.
Yeah. I have a large following on TikTok. For now, I think TikTok, YouTube is the best. I have, yes. So if you want to follow me on YouTube, it's Timo Media 360. On Facebook, don't go there. TikTok, it's Timo Media 360.
TIMO Media.
Media 360.
360.
Yes.
Thank you so much, my brother Al Hassan Timothy. Timo Media, as usual, and we'll catch you on TikTok.
Thank you very much.
All right, take care.
Thank you, my sister.
Not to mention in the Caribbean. And here in Jamaica, we are reeling. We haven't said much about it in recent times, but we'll revisit it at some point. Here we are. Russia, China, really seriously looking at the continent of Africa. This is their focus right now, and they're making no bones about it. Vladimir Putin has said Russia's trade turnover with African countries increased in 2022-23 and reached almost over $20 billion US dollars. That's with a B. So he's talking about now forming a monetary and financial system between Africa and Russia and establishing new transport and logistical chains. These are all good ideas for Africa, you know. As they were good ideas for Africa-China relations. China at the time said it would have been a win-win for China and a win for Africa. But it didn't quite work out, and it's not quite working out that way. So what has Africa learned from Africa-China relations? That's a question. And then I suppose if lessons are learned, then we'll see that work manifesting in Africa-Russia relations. But let's see. Listening from the UK, Udoni, I need to have a conversation with you about that election. You know, we should probably have a live link with you to for your analysis on the upcoming election in the UK happening on July 4, and all of the issues that are arising as a result of that. So, in South Africa, there was an election, and the ANC lost big time, 40% of the votes. This is the first time since the dismantling, the apparent political dismantling of apartheid. We said at the time that apartheid is dead, long live apartheid, especially when we saw the Truth and Reconciliation Commission. The greatest betrayal of South Africa was the Truth and outside of coming out of this whole, Mandela coming from prison situation, was the Truth and Reconciliation. And then the betrayal has been continuing after that. One of the first persons to meet Mr. Mandela as he walked through the doors coming out of prison was Cyril Ramaphosa. Cyril Ramaphosa has always been, well, not always, but there was a time during the negotiations coming out of apartheid that Cyril Ramaphosa became an integral figure. And he has never, from my perspective, and I've talked about this many times in this space, one of the reasons why I have not gone to South Africa under Cyril Ramaphosa is because I am protesting, and it is a single woman protest, but I am protesting. I'll never set foot there as long as Cyril Ramaphosa is president of South Africa. The greatest betrayal of African people has been happening in South Africa under the various leaders over time. And every single one of them. And so it was a betrayal from day one, because those who sent Mandela's children to school, those who funded elections, those who provided housing, those who were literally putting food on the table, were the same ones who were the principal players of apartheid. And so for me, it was always apartheid is dead, long live apartheid. South Africans are still waiting for the promise of independence, of freedom from apartheid. Still waiting for that. It has not been realized. No, this was, one of the advisors to Cyril Ramaphosa and to the ANC over the years has been someone who was a principal player during apartheid. I think he was a defense minister or responsible for defense at some level in the apartheid regime. And the Oppenheimers and, all the others who are still funding South Africa, the private sector is white, Caucasian, European, you name it. And they still control South Africa at at all levels. So someone like Julius Malema, I'm not quite sure what his feel is, because here we are. We have a breakaway with Mbeki going out to, not Mbeki, Zuma going off to with the MK party, and then we have Ramaphosa who refuses to budge, but the people have said that we don't want you, Cyril Ramaphosa, but he doesn't care about that. He's calling for a government of national unity. All right, so I'm not quite sure what's happening. I'm standing by for my next guest, Southall, who is the chairman of the Rastafari United Front National Tour de France. This has been organized by JABEM. Devon, of course, is from JABEM. It's also being organized by the Ministers Fraternal, and that's a group of Christians, ministers here, church ministers here on the island, and also the Little Duns River community. So let me go to Dr. Devon Taylor, who's online. Good morning, Dr. Taylor. How are you doing? Oops.
Good morning, KABU.
Okay, good. All right. Wasn't sure if I had you, but here you are. Thank you, Devon, for coming on. Little Duns River, of course, we were just talking about that. Still a point of a conflict here on the island because, and I say conflict because, an issue, a person was shot and killed in the vicinity of the Little Duns River, not at the Little Duns River, in the vicinity of the Little Duns River. And the government of Jamaica, under the UDC, its agency, shut Little Duns River, made all kinds of noise, denied access to the people, and over time we had the new representative that is, or the person who's going to be running in the area, because he's not the MP yet, right? But this is an interesting thing. We have to look at this. It's a very interesting thing. Who is the MP for the area?
Marshall Williams, I think, is the MP. Mata Samura is the MP. He's doing all the work in the constituency right now.
But he's not the MP. But is he the MP? No, Devon, I'm serious. Ezekiel are confused.
Something? Maybe this violates the Constitution, right? We probably need to look at this.
It has to be a constitutional violation. Who is a member of Parliament for the region? For down here, sir? Because I was just about to announce that it's Matthew Samuda, but then it hit me that we haven't had an election since March. And we don't have a by-election either.
So, do you mean that somebody is in the post illegitimately? Is that what you're implying here?
I am implying that I did not realize that that we have two persons and that one is absent, but the one that's absent, I'm going to have to talk it out to myself. I can't talk it out on air. So this is just hitting me as I'm talking to you, Devon. And Devon, don't tell me you were aware of it. You just get it too, don't it?
No, yeah, I mean, but I'm just kind of like looking at it. If you can have two MP sitting in a constituency, and that is in line with the Constitution. So we have a breach right here. And what that breach has been doing now is like, the Little Dunns River family since 2022. So we're approaching 2 years now, where the livelihood of the folks in the space have been severely impacted. We are Jamaicans in this hot weather that's going on in Jamaica right now cannot access the Little Dunns River except for 2 days of the week. I mean, and here we are, still fighting in the courts for access rights and for the rights of people to earn a living in these tough days. I mean, this is what we're up against, and this is why we have to keep pushing hard. This is why we're having these rallies, to remind the powers to be that they are violating our rights, that our access to these spaces, are not taken seriously. And so we have to stand up.
Forgive me, Devon, because we've had many conversations, but I am still stuck at who is the MP for this region here, Northeast St. Ann, because the decisions and the announcements are being made by Mr. Matthew Samuda, right?
Yes, they are.
Is he doing it as Minister of Water?
The capacity in which he functions right now in that space. Mm-hmm. Of course, yes, he sits in the office of the Prime Minister with a portfolio of water. That's what his responsibility is.
Oh, so he's doing it on behalf of the Prime Minister?
Well, now we're getting into all kind of technicalities. Well, of course, the Prime Minister had the portfolio that is head of the Beach Control Act, is head of, the whole ministry under which the regulation of beaches across the country sits.
Okay, all right. So I can move on now. But that is beginning to make some sense. And I know you're not giving me an answer because you cannot tell me what it is. But I'm Simeon and Torian mixed up in one. I could not move. But all right. So on Friday the 14th of June, there will be a stand-up protest, just to stand up with the Ministers Fraternal and the Little Dunns River community to say what?
So we're saying that it is full time that you reopen Little Dunns River for 7 days of the week so the Jamaican people can access the treasures of the land. They can access the river, they can access the sea and use the space, for all the purpose of recreation. But we're also saying that there is an established Little Dunns River family there that, use the space economically. They're the one who, cleared that space for more than 40 years ago. They're the ones who have maintained the upkeep of the space. They're the ones who have been, using this space to feed their family and have made it safe for Jamaicans to go down those rocky slopes really, and enjoy the aesthetics of the space. Mm-hmm. And they have been locked out for nearly 2 years now. And we have had around 3 court hearings since. Mm-hmm. And the Little Dunns River, legal team have not gotten their act together. It's mention dates after mention date because the UDC cannot get their act together as to coming there and facing the trial. Mm-hmm. And so we have made the demands that they open the space back, so the folks can continue doing their economic deals, and Jamaica can access the space. and they're still not budged on that. So we have to take this, up in form of a protest. We are protesting. We're having a rally there to say that it is time that you reopen the space. There's no need for delay. The court trial can continue while we continue to use the space. While the community use it continue their vending in the space. It's a travesty that for 2 years, with the economic situation in Jamaica, that our people have to be locked out. And when we see, other kind of unfortunate murders happen across Jamaica, in other spaces, bodies have been washed up and dumped up beach, this harmony that did not close out. Right. People have been shot and beaten in Negril, murdered, and that place did not close
and people
down.
are killed on hotel properties, and the hotels are not closed down. So,
exactly.
So what has happened here is egregious, and it's a wicked, cruel act that they have pulled off on the people of Jamaica. They continue to do this because we see the same kind of situation unfolding with a Blue Lagoon. Not that somebody died there, but that it is opened in a piecemeal way where the people are begging for access, and it has to be going through the courts in the same way the Little Duns River is about to go to the courts. Talking about going through the courts, I know there's an upcoming court case that's in Portland. When is that?
That is Monday, June 17. That is when we're going to hear arguments. So the actual trial now starts. So, that the Blue Lagoon case is full on the 17th of June, and we're asking all of our, folks in Portland to shoot for the first, date there where arguments will be heard. So that is going to be very interesting, because, as you know, the parochial road, has been closed, and, we are fighting to make sure that road stays under the control of the people of Jamaica, so our access rights cannot be, continue to be violated in the space. Should also mention that Little Duns River will go back in the St. Anne's Bay Municipal Court on July 17th also. So we have a very busy summer here as it relates to, fighting for access rights. And this is something I want to lay out clear here. That is not going to continue. Jamaica, listen, we are in an election cycle. We are in a cycle of constitutional reform. It is full time that all beaches and rivers in Jamaica become public. And that is one of the things that we're asking for. We're
non-negotiable.
None at all. That any administration that will take power next year, they must know that. And we're saying this to them because they have put it in their manifesto. They have made mention of it in the budget presentation. And they're upping around the issue whether or not they are going to make Jamaican beaches public. And I'm not talking about one Jamaican beach or two Jamaican beaches. I'm talking about entire 494 miles of coastline. Make it public. And by making it public, what we're saying is that we have unfettered rights. Okay? We have general rights. So nobody can tell us say we can't walk on the beach in Jamaica. It needs to end. This discrimination, this exclusion must end.
Yes.
And it cannot. We need, and we are demanding it. And we need actually these political parties that are vying for power, that are caught up in all kinds of distraction you just laid out. And, these kind of fundamental rights, if we're truly going to decolonize Jamaica, then we need to make sure that the resources of the land, the treasures of the land, is vested in the people, and the people have unfettered access to them.
And I would like to hear Mr. Patterson. I'd like to hear PJ Patterson raise his voice on this also, because he's talking about decolonization right now. Many years when he should have done something before, but didn't do anything. Okay, so you're talking about it on the back end in your twilight years. But let us talk about human rights. Let us talk about basic rights. Let us talk about access and the right to access water and the right to access the beach, the right to access the rivers. This is some of the things we want to hear you talk about, Mr. Patterson, in the same way that you are foregrounding other things. We want you to talk about the rights of the ordinary Jamaican citizen. You now have time to do that, and you have the platform. So I'm putting that also in your court. The distraction is wide, because the constitutional reform, that document, there is nothing there. They haven't dealt with the colonial legacy, the document that you're always referring to, the Beach Control Act and whatever else act that them have there controlling the beach. That's not part of the, it's not a big part of this constitutional reform discussion, because people like yourself, I think, Devon, you have been left out of any other committees that had to deal with the discussions leading up to the constitutional reform. Am I right?
Well, you're right. But funny enough, KABU, the League Constitutional, Committee report have a section in there that they highlighted that a submission was made by the Jamaica Beach Birthright Environmental Movement. And while, I have had a conversation, with Nadine Spence, Dr. Nadine Spence, who was, informing me that, it's not until phase 2 that they would consider, the issue around access rights. Very clearly told her that was, unacceptable, because this human rights issue cannot, remain so. We have been, since 1956, as a matter of fact, since they brought us on these shores, have been denied, access to our beaches. And so, we had that discussion, and, town hall in Portland, our representative was very, strident in making the point that we were locked out of these beaches, and that the Beach Control Act of 1956 is violating the rights of Jamaican people to access the beaches. But we have not made a formal submission in that space, and it's the whole Charter Rights thing that just contains one mention in it regarding Jamaican rights to a healthy environment, and free of harm. We need the Constitution amendment, because the Constitution must have a section on, environment. And that piece on environment must also include, what the rights of the Jamaican people are as far as concerned to the treasure of the land.
And we're going to have to stand up for our rights, and I'm talking to the Jamaican people this morning. We're going to have to stand up for our rights. Nobody's going to stand for us. The people, whoever we're waiting for is we ourselves. There's no one coming to stand up for us. This is basically how it is. So we're going to have to make the demands. I will want to demand is, see like on a cussing Guyana this morning, put it on his TikTok, see him on a cuss, see him like on a cussing Guyana. I still want to put the right, the basic human right, access to beaches, access to water, put it out there, talk directly to the Member of Parliament, talk directly to the Prime Minister, if you will, and the leader of the opposition, because as you said, Devon, there is an election coming up. Devon, I have to cut it here because we have the Supreme Ventures draw coming up, but I just want you to wrap with telling us, reiterating what's going to happen at Little Dunn's River, and just to make a call for people to attend. When we make these calls, we wish you'll attend. We're very happy, as usual, to see the church, the ministers fraternal, standing up for the people when they are needed to do so. Go ahead, Devon.
Yes, so this coming Friday, June 14th, between 11 and 2, we'll be gathering at Little Dunn's River, to really make the statement that it is time to open the river, open the beach back to the Jamaican public for its purposes of recreation. Allow the vendors to go back in the space 7 days a week so they can really earn a living for their families. So those are our two asks, that the Jamaican people regain a 7-day access there, and that, the commerce of the folks who have been using that space for over 40 years to feed them families, regain access to do so. So we're asking Jamaican people, to show up, to let our voice be heard, that we will no longer, sit down and allow these violations of our rights to continue. We need to have access to the beaches and rivers in Jamaica. The time hot, it is discriminatory. We need to stand up for the right. This is an election time. Whatever you want, your politician them do whatever you want to change another country. This is not where you make your voice be heard. This is constitutional reform time. Get up and stand up and say, this is what we want. You can't sit down and wait for people to solve the problem. We have to solve them ourselves, and that's why we mobilize with Minister Paternal and the Little Dunn River family and the Dunn family coming all together to represent and stand up for our rights. And we're asking the public to show up. I will also put in one plug that this will also be going on Saturday the 15th in Long Bay, Portland as well. And we'll, beg the opportunity to come back and speak about this because this is happening across the island, where every nice spot where Jamaicans build up and set up and, do a thing, then take it over.
This is the wickedness that's happening on the island, and then it's smoke and mirrors, them literally distracting us with discussions about whether or not Mark Golding had British citizenship. That is a distraction. Remember, me tell you, that's a distraction.
A big distraction. It's a big distraction in the space. Everyone knows the legitimacy of that. And, they're just running around not knowing that it's not about citizens' duality that betrays Jamaica. Because you have a lot of folks down there who just have one citizenship that have sold us down the river for many years. And this distraction is taken away from the serious issues that we need to be dealing with. Our fundamental rights.
Exactly.
We're dealing with crime situation in the country. We're dealing with issues that are impacting us, the water security.
Yes.
We're seeing granting permits to build on 156 acres of prime, water, reservoirs out in Mamadi there. These are the issues that we need to fight against.
Or else we're going to turn...
Right build the watershed, you can't build on that, but permission is going to be given there, for 400 houses to build there. Taking that watershed out of the circulation where places like Staton have water problem. We see what they did down in Negril there. With the massive hotel taking out mangroves.
I have to cut...
There's issues to fight for.
I'll call you back. We'll come back and have this and continue this conversation another week. But thank you so much, my brother. This is something that we need to raise in the space. Do have to go. We'll talk some more and see you on the 14th.
Take care. Blessed. Yes, thanks.
To 8 o'clock, you're inside of the Africa Forum. It is Running African. Oh, is that you were telling me? I thought you were telling me that's also always online. Do not blame her. My bad. And let me just say this clear because she's been in and I keep saying to her, write it. But I know now why she was coming in. All right. So, my bad there. Thank you so much, my sister. Wow. All right. We're standing by and a colleague, radio presenter, broadcaster, entrepreneur, real estate agent. Looking at breaking barriers, overcoming obstacles to success. And in this segment, focusing on the state of black entrepreneurship in Canada. Elaine Thompson, E.T., as you may know her, is on the line. Good morning, Elaine.
Good morning, Cam.
I don't know how does one interview one of her best friends? And I have to say one of her best friends, guess who's listening from the UK? Miss Dawn Eaton. So
of course. Hello, Dawn.
So what about that?
Listen, Cam.
Yes.
Another great program. I've enjoyed listening in and learning as usual. And you demonstrating once again that you're born for this, my friend.
Look at you. Thank you so much, my sister and friend.
You're very welcome.
So we're just going to lay it straight. So Elaine, as I said, is also a radio presenter. And for those who know, and I say this because you also worked here at IRFM for a few years. What years were those again? Like 2015, 2016?
No, actually that was in the late 90s.
I'm deliberately teasing you, man.
Leading up to 2000, yeah.
Right. So it was late 90s going into 2000, and you hosted the Sunday evening show. And
yes, I hosted Cool Vibes, which interestingly is still called Cool Vibes. I named that program, and I'm so proud.
I remember, yes. And you also you also hosted Saturday. What time on Saturday were you on again?
Saturday mornings, I came on. What was it?
6
I think I did
10?
6 to 10.
Mm-hmm,
Yeah,
6 to 10. So
6 to 10 a.m.
Right. So just let's just get that out there. And also, you have been a broadcaster for years before you came to IRFM, but also a radio presenter on Black radio, mainstream radio in Canada. Tell us a little bit about that time, because up to last big interview you did was with Justin Trudeau, and he begged for it, didn't he?
Yes, it was an election year, and I had the pleasure of interviewing the Prime Minister Justin Trudeau, and that was quite interesting. That was the last radio station that I worked, G98, now Flow 98, and that was in 2021, 22, somewhere there.
So here we are, because in addition to being a radio presenter, you're also a real estate agent. That has always been your second, or your main job. I think maybe the job that makes the money. Because radio doesn't.
The job that pays the bills.
Because radio certainly doesn't. And
I don't know anyone who paid their bills from doing radio. But anyway,
except Paola. except the Paola situation. But right. So you've always been a real estate agent, and you have in recent, because we're going to be talking about Black entrepreneurship in the space. I know when you interviewed Justin Trudeau that time, one of the questions you raised was actually this, the challenges, but also looking at what Canada in particular and under his governance would be doing to make it easier to lessen the challenges for Black entrepreneurs, Black businesses, and so on. So how difficult is it now in Canada to break through? I'm asking you this within the context of the fact that you have also branched out in your real estate, and you now own a hotel. You've bought a hotel, haven't you?
Yes, I have. Along with my investment partner, we have bought a hotel in Niagara Falls. But before we get to that, and you mentioned the interview I had with the Prime Minister, and that was about the difficulty with Black businesses accessing funding for startups or operational capital. And it's interesting that you brought that up. I totally forgot about that. But you know what? To their credit, and at the time of the interview, he had pledged several $1 million. I believe at the time it was something like some 20-something $1 million to pour into the Black community for different initiatives, including Black businesses, right? So the Canadian government, to their credit, have tried to address this inequity by providing those millions to help to fund the Black businesses. These funds are supposed to be accessible through financial institutions, but guess what? The barriers are still very much in place. The gatekeepers are the same. The hurdles to qualify are the same. And quite frankly, the biases are the same. The mindsets are the same. Because it's about policy and a certain culture and mindset about Black businesses. And also the lack of research and information, quite frankly, the lack of will to meet those needs. So those are still hurdles.
So that
there's money all around.
So that the access to capital is what one of the things that you're looking at with the Prime Minister, and so many years in. But this is and you said this is a long-standing challenge, especially for black people in Canada. I've had many conversations with black people in Canada. There's a poem that what our sister does. I still remember her name, where she talks about Canada is so racist.
Like, really?
It's a beautiful poem. I need to find it to play it this morning. So that it is within that context of there seems to be this focus on diversity, but when you drive it down to access issues like access to capital, I hear you saying that there are challenges there, and these are long-standing challenges, even though capital is available.
Yeah, I mean, let's face it, funding can be a challenge for any business, right? But black business owners experience it more than others. Mm-hmm. Like you said, the main challenge, in a word, is still access to money, startup capital and operational capital. Mm-hmm. Black businesses struggle to secure startup capital. And this is due to historical disadvantages and biases, really, in the system of lending money and other systems of oppression. The alternative, though, that I find in the marketplace is to go to alternative lending, right? So, and this means private money, private lenders, which is a lot more expensive. Mm-hmm. And so, if that's the route black businesses have to access, the struggle is real from jump.
Mm-hmm. And yet, on the other hand, we see, although this is a different level, but walk with me on this. We see this rush to Canada by Jamaicans, Caribbean people on the whole, but let's focus on Jamaica, where the average university graduate that you meet and you say, okay, so what next? They'll tell you, I'm trying to get to Canada. And so there is this, because there is this concept on the ground here that one of the things to do to make it in business, to go get a really good job and to grow in business, is that Canada provides that space. Is that a contradiction?
Well, it depends on how you market the product, right? Mm-hmm. Canada markets itself very well in that sense. To live it and to hear about it is usually contradictory. There are folks who come to Canada, whether they're from an academic perspective or startup businesses, and they pour a lot of capital in. And when they're here, boots on the ground, it's a whole different experience. Mm-hmm. Because those of us who have lived here and have gone through the system and all that entails, we know what to expect. We are familiar with the bumps in the road and how to navigate certain spaces, but newcomers don't. They come with expectations. They come with a certain amount of entitlement also, whether they're refugees or otherwise. There's a certain expectation. That just is not real. But it's all in the packaging and the marketing of Canada. There's a lot of work to be done. Let's just put it that way.
All right, hold the line for me, Elaine, and then when we come back, we look at your own personal experiences, because you've been in Canada for a while and you've always been in business, even while you were a radio presenter. So let me take a quick break and come back. My colleague and friend, Elaine Thompson, is speaking to us about breaking barriers, overcoming obstacles to success, looking at the state of black entrepreneurship in Canada. So Elaine, so you've been in Canada for a while. You literally left straight out of high school to Canada, and you've been in business for forever. We've looked at some of those barriers, but for you yourself, what were some of those obstacles that you had to overcome along the way? Because it's generally real estate, but it's also media. And what did I miss? And knowing you, there had to be about 4 more.
Well, the barriers are really what we just talked about. For me, it was getting access to mainstream networking, tapping into the industry in a certain way that others didn't have difficulty doing. There's so many systemic barriers in place for us that it just boggles the mind. We're shut out of so many spaces. And I found that as a continuous struggle in business particularly. I consider myself a serial entrepreneur, with some success and some failures, quite frankly. But what I've come to appreciate is that everything prepares you. Never discount any experience, whether it's positive or negative, because that's exactly what prepares you for what's next.
I remember the work that you did during COVID when everything was locked down. And this was charitable work at the end of the day, but that you set up in Canada a proper kitchen that you actually were feeding many. And so it tells me something about the networking you mentioned just now, because you would have had to have had some serious networking to do what you did to feed people during COVID, and especially during the winter months who were homeless, etc.
Yes, and I can't even speak to that without mentioning my team and my right hand, Danae Peart, who is my go-to in everything that I do. So big up yourself, Danae, if you're listening. And a whole team that came together to make that happen. We provided over 18,000 meals during COVID. And as you said, we set up that kitchen and we made it happen. We got out there. We tapped on doors. We called people. Jamaica National was the first to come on board and fund it. And so we did what we had to do. Many food banks chipped in, and we got food to those people. Many of our black people, seniors mainly, were shut-ins. They had no way of getting meals. And we found them and we fed them throughout COVID. The program lasted almost 2 years.
I mean, that was brilliant. And you were able to tap into that network that you cultivated over time, which I thought was really phenomenal, just witnessing that. The issue of being able to set up a business, this is, where does it start? It start from a thinking of it, because obviously, and especially in a foreign country, this can't be easy, especially when you're dealing with racism, discrimination, all kinds of biases. In Jamaica, it would have been hard, much less to be in a country where there's so many obstacles.
Well, I guess what demotivates others motivates me, as one of my friends said recently. I think some people hesitate to go into certain industry because we don't see anyone like ourselves doing it. That doesn't discourage me. That is exactly what motivates me. So and as you asked, how does it happen from a thought? Because we know everything starts with an idea, and then you have to actively bring it to form. That's one of my strengths, despite the obstacles, and even to circle back and talk about this new acquisition, there were many obstacles. We've been working on getting this hotel and getting it becoming a reality for almost a year. So it's when you see something come into form and you think, oh wow, how does that happen? And you think it happened overnight. It's been years in the making sometimes. It's comparable to when you see an athlete shine on the court, not seeing the hundreds of hours that goes into training and the sacrifices. So it's kind of like that.
Yeah, the sweat in the training.
Yes.
And this, I know a lot of people are saying, I mean, how does one leave from Jamaica, from, Clarendon College, and buy and buy a hotel in Canada, in the Niagara Falls region? I mean, how does that even happen? I mean, when you told me, I mean, when the deal was done, I mean, I was literally, to me, it was a phenomenal thing. I sat and I said to me, how did she even achieve that? What kind of work would have gone into all of this to get you to the space, to do this, the challenges, the mindset, the consistency, to just stick to it. And I hear you just outline that now. It's in the works for a while. It's over a year. But here we are. Well, tell us a little bit about that venture, Elaine. What is it exactly? Because we reference it twice now and it's just, in passing.
All right. So how did we get there? It quite frankly, we leveraged everything we could leverage, because the banks weren't going to give us the money. Wow. It just doesn't happen. So there's that. The process to get here was not an easy one. It was many sleepless nights. It was a lot of stress. It was a lot of, do I give up today or do I make another phone call type of thing? Mm. So it was a journey to get it done, and I think any business person can tell you who have made major leaps, will tell you the struggle is real, and you have to get people in your corner, and networking is so important. From getting a lawyer who will do everything and move every mountain and threaten people if he has to.
So like you had Bert Samuels.
Right?
Did you
I had a Bert.
You had the old Bert Samuels.
And yes, then a lawyer in your corner, not necessarily from your community either, will say, look, you better get it done or else.
Yes.
So you have to have the people who will bend over backwards to help you to succeed. And you know what? If you're in that mindset, it's funny how the universe works, because when you're in that, on that trajectory or on that alignment, as I like to call it, people just show up to make it happen. And you think, you don't know me, why are you doing this? But that's how it works.
The law of attraction,
and if you will, right? So, and there are mornings that I would wake up and I'd say to myself, okay, do I quit today? The day when I just throw in the towel. And then, I pray a lot. And sometimes I don't even have a prayer. Sometimes my prayer is, God, today my faith is as small as a mustard seed. But we all know what comes from a mustard seed. And that's my prayer. I'm just telling you this, like this is really, literally what happened.
Yes, and I totally get it. I totally get it, because I obviously it's a big deal, and I mentioned that. I mean, to acquire a hotel in Jamaica would have been a massive deal. For Jamaican to do that in Canada, you multiply that down the line and cube it when you're done. Where is the hotel, Elaine, and what's the name of it? Just so that if anyone's listening and they want to,
Yes, of course. It is the Falcon Inn. Falcon Inn is located on the street that leads to everywhere in Niagara Falls. We're located at 7865 Lundy's Lane in Niagara Falls. We're just minutes from the largest world attraction, which is Niagara Falls itself. There are several festivals, casinos, and always something happening. Niagara Falls is the summer hub of Canada for people from all over the world. So we'll be happy to host everyone. We try to keep our prices very competitive. We're online, booking.com, Expedia, falconinniagara.ca or .com. We encourage groups to come and enjoy our facilities and our beautiful pool in the center of the property. We're on 1.2 acres, and we have a lovely 4-bedroom house there as well, and 32 rooms, and all the amenities. We're in the process now of upgrading and renovating, but again, accessing money is a challenge. So we're taking it in small bites.
Yeah.
And we're hoping to be able to take bigger bites later on, but that's where we are.
It's just brilliant. You're talking, I'm just getting goose pimples and just having that response, just listening. And for many reasons too, not least of all because I know you so well and we've been friends for many, many years. So I know that this had to be a labor of love, for you to get it to the point that you're at now. For persons who are listening, who have ideas of entering into business, and especially because and not just hotel, not just at that big level, because you've been in business forever. This has been your way of life. What advice would you give to people who are listening who want to break through? You have this brilliant idea, but don't know how to start, where to go from here.
It may sound cliche, but you have to believe in yourself, and you have to trust yourself. You have to trust your vision, because everything will come up against you to not realize that vision, and in real time, and it won't be just imagined. It's there. So you have to focus. For me personally, prayer works. I pray and meditate a lot. And that you just have to believe, and you have to open yourself to meet people, and you have to talk to people. My partner was a stranger before I met him. He wasn't a long time associate or friend or anything like that. But I'm a chatterbox, so I talk to people. And we found we found many things in common. And so we forged a partnership. He's a Trinidadian, but he'll correct me. He'll be the first one to correct me to say he was born in Tobago, right? So
that's interesting. I thought you'd have gone for the big island.
So interpret that as you will.
Yes.
I mean, I've spent years in broadcasting, as we talked about, and real estate, and he spent years in the construction industry. So we bring our unique skill set to this business. And any business you're going into, make sure you have the skill set. Because if you don't, it can go sideways.
Elaine, I remember last year, was it last year or the year before, when the Canada's main, or Toronto's main black radio station, I can't call it Canada on a whole, one of the main black radio stations that you worked at, mainstream media.
It was the only black radio station, commercial radio station, yes.
Exactly, and that it went up for sale. And I remember how you, the process that you went through, just trying to acquire it, or to acquire it with a partner, or just to ensure that it remains on air, for black people, for black Caribbean people, because this is what it was, generally speaking. But at the end of the day, the obstacles that we're talking about, the challenges we're talking about, breaking into black business in Canada, was one of those things that I think worked against you in terms of trying to acquire that radio station. Let's talk about that within the context of moving on from that into acquiring a hotel, because that must have been for you a disappointment, but to not stop.
Right. So it was a disappointment. I was one of those people who were trying to bring minds together and network to get the radio station to stay in Black ownership and in the Black community. That didn't happen after months of negotiations, but and as you said, that was very disappointing for me. I mentioned earlier that everything prepares you, right? Mm-hmm. So unknowing to me, that was also part of my preparation, and that has led to this acquisition. Mm-hmm. So there were lessons learned there that I've applied here. Let's just put it that way.
Yes. Listen, I have to wrap, but I have to give you a message from the sales manager at IRFM, Mr. Nicholas Evans.
Is that my name? You mean Nick has a message from me this morning?
Yes, he says.
What is it? What is it? My unfiltered Nick.
What
is it?
Well, he says, enough congratulations and so on. And then he says, let Elaine know I expect the friends and family rate soon.
So, listen, man, I'm going to create a discount code just for Nick. Okay?
Right.
Not to be shared. A discount code just for Nick.
Just for Nick. Right. Friends and family rate.
Listen, Cabs, when are you coming?
Well, listen, we're looking at, because remember we have plans, right? So we want to do the literary retreat, right? The book club retreat and the poetry retreat. Am I too previous?
No, man, by the pool.
By the pool. So
poetry and book reading by the pool. How does that sound?
Well, let us just wrap right here. Say good morning to Dunn O'Mattis and Aldith Hunkor and Dawn Eaton and Joan Pedler and me leaving out enough people, right?
Listen now.
And Andrew.
Before you go quickly. Yes. I just wanted to say congratulations to my nephew, Sean Dunkley, of whom I'm very proud. Mm-hmm. He's the national sales manager for the wholesale channel at Pepsi-Cola Jamaica. He was awarded the chairman's ring of honor this past week for his outstanding record with the company. So when our young men are doing well, we should big them up.
Congratulations, Sean. Big up, Sean. Big up yourself.
Yes.
We love it. And Elaine, congratulations, my darling. And great work. We'll keep in touch. And definitely, we just talk about something on air that make a lot of sense. I hope Nick heard that, because all the way ago. Thank you so much.
Yes.
We talk later.
All right. Thank you so much, Cal. Okay. We'll talk to you.
All right. So it's Elaine Thompson, radio presenter, real estate agent, entrepreneur, and hotel manager, owner in Canada. All right. Let me take... Oh, no, we don't have to go to a break right now. So I know that earlier we were scheduled to speak with my brother, Toto, who is in South Africa. But we didn't get to him. Toto, we have him on the line now. So let me go straight to South Africa where Toto is standing by. My brother, Toto, how are you doing?
I'm great, my sister.
You know, thank you so much. We have about 10 minutes. But one of the things that I know you were doing that today, you're pretty busy today because we're catching you. You're coming out of a meeting of sorts to come talk to us, right?
Yes, one of the things I have an institute called Bantu Soul Society, which is dealing with African spirituality, yes, African cosmology, African ontology, epistemology, and so forth. So yes, I got invited by one of the apostolic churches, these African churches, like revivalist type, mm-hmm, so to come and speak to their congregation. So that is what I was busy with when you called, but I already finished giving my talk.
All right, okay. We won't keep you long. So Just a quick update, if you will, because we heard the elections are over. Last week we spoke about what next, and one of the things you said to us last week was it's going to have to be a coalition government. We were looking at how would the ANC, who would they reach out to? The ANC, African National Congress, with 40%. We looked at Jacob Zuma's MK. We looked at Julius Malema's EFF, and obviously the DA, and all the questions that arose with that. So we left it there, thinking it was going to be a coalition, and that Cyril Ramaphosa would have called the relevant persons to the table, but not quite, is it?
Now the ANC, a couple of days back, they had their NEC meeting, National Executive Committee meeting, which is their highest decision-making body. And in that meeting, they came out with a model of government of national unity, GNU, instead of a coalition government. So now the government of national unity is a model they had in 1994, and then it failed in 1996, which was between the ANC and National Party, the former apartheid party that was ruling South Africa, where they had the former president of apartheid South Africa, FW de Klerk, was one of the two deputy presidents, one of them being Thabo Mbeki and Mandela being the president. But it quickly collapsed in a space of 2 years. So they're trying to do that again, and their choice of partners in this case now, there's likely possibility they will go with the DA and the IFP. Now, on a whole, when you look at them, IFP, of course, was used by the apartheid government, sponsored black-on-black violence before the election. The one of
and the IFP, you're talking about the Inkatha Freedom Party under Buthelezi.
The Inkatha Freedom Party of Buthelezi, and the DA, which is basically another whites-only party, and then the ANC. They're proposing that, and with that type of coalition, they can give the ANC and Cyril Ramaphosa a lifeline to continue.
A lifeline, you say, Thao, but it sounds to me as if the ANC is presiding over its own death knell, though. This is like the ANC presiding over its own death.
Well, it's a temporary solution to a permanent problem. The ANC has been declining from 2014. So, and it can only go down. It can just only go down. It is, and so, but now, because you see, like, remember we talked last week that in South Africa we have a situation of the ruling class and the ruling party. Now, the ruling class, they control the ruling party, which is the white monopoly capital, which is the whites who are running the strategic sectors of our economy. So they will most naturally dictate terms for the ANC and Cyril Ramaphosa what to do. And one of the things they are saying that they don't want parties that does not respect the constitution and the rule of law. And that in this case is MK party of Jacob Zuma and EFF of Julius Malema, because both of them, they're talking about changing the constitution, bringing in expropriation of land without compensation, talking about radical economic transformation, free education, pushing towards Africa that is more governed by the traditional leaders, give the kings and the queens the more leveraged position to influence government. So now, people who talk about those type of amendments, they try to characterize them as if they don't respect the rule of law and the constitution, because they have presented this constitution as the best constitution in the world. But this best constitution, nobody's adapting it in their country. Not even America is adapting South African constitution. But it's supposed to be the best model of democracy. It is best because it protects white interests
and this is the point.
Disadvantages the Africans.
It protects the interest of the white, of the very same apartheid actors. It protects the white interest. And so this is a white imperialism that we're seeing again, white power politics that we're seeing coming to the fore. I'm very disappointed just listening to you. Let me take a quick break. We're going to take a quick break and come back. Please don't hang.
All right.
So light, so buttery, so crisp, so good. Yes.
Government, this is how we saw it. I don't think we saw this. I think you might have mentioned it though, Thor, because we had 1994, you mentioned last week, the coalition government that tumbled quickly, de Klerk walked, etc. And then to 2024, we're faced with a similar situation. White monopoly capitalism is what this is looking like. What is the mood of the people in South Africa, the general electorate? Because this to me, for my own personal self, is really disappointing.
Well, obviously the mood of the people is the people are disappointed, and I mean they are trying to plan the same strategy even to dislodge MK in KZN in KwaZulu, because remember MK outrightly won KwaZulu to run KwaZulu province. So with the same government of national unity, they will apply the same strategy in KwaZulu. And that has a potential to destabilize that province. Remember, that province was plunged into violence where more than 300 people were killed. One of the post-apartheid massacre that we don't talk about 300 Zulu people were killed by the Indians after President Zuma was locked up. And into 2021, yes. So it has a potential to plunge the country into chaos. President Zuma cautioned that they must not count the votes yet because they've been robbed. Remember when MK was launched? Within 3 days, it had already registered 3 million people online. So, and within a month, it already had 10 million people. So they firmly believe that the elections were rigged. And Jacob Zuma and his people, they have evidence to suggest like that, that these elections were rigged in favor of the ANC, DA, and other smaller parties, because they're afraid of Jacob Zuma's government. And we have seen during campaigning the popularity. I mean, this is a history, a party that is like 4 months or 5 months, and it garnered so much votes, it filled up stadiums. Like the ANC could not even fill up the stadium, and it has surpassed the EFF to be number 3 now, main party. So there is a strong feeling that the elections are rigged, and with the regime of Ramaphosa, they've got the judges and the magistrates in their pocket. They always found against Jacob Zuma. It's only these 3 cases he won this year. But most of the time they found against Jacob Zuma. They protect Ramaphosa. When Ramaphosa is facing scrutiny, they run to the court to seal the records and everything. And then it was once exposed that they have this WhatsApp group that involve judges, journalists, editors, all these strategic people in our society. So now there is a feeling that these elections are rigged, and that feeling can translate into violence, instability. And Jacob Zuma was not mincing his words around that.
So is there, would you say that there is an uneasiness or uneasy tension, especially because Jacob Zuma is now calling for a recount, and is also saying that the election...
It will be worse if they form the same coalition and take over the only province that Jacob Zuma's party has won now, which is KwaZulu. You understand? So if they go ahead and take it over, it is going to even make worse and fuel the sentiments that they are even taking the last thing that the Zulu people acquired for themselves. I mean, the whites acquired Western Cape for themselves. So we are now getting into the era of probably ethnic nationalism or ethnic federalism if you wish, but it's not really that ethnic in a sense that the people even who voted for Jacob Zuma in KwaZulu-Natal are not only Zulu people. You have Indian people, you have non-Zulu speakers who are staying in KwaZulu-Natal who voted for Jacob Zuma. So there is a potential for violence and serious tension in the next week or so.
We're watching this very, very closely. As I said, and I feel your disappointment. I'm also very disappointed. When I heard Cyril Ramaphosa made that announcement, I was shocked too, because I wasn't expecting it. I'm ashamed of Cyril Ramaphosa, really. I think he has betrayed the people of South Africa. He's been doing that for a while now. And the fact that there is not an international or global outcry, I think, is because of what he represents in terms of representing, as I said before, white monopoly capitalism in South Africa. Those who have the influence and the control are the ones that Cyril Ramaphosa is representing. And here we find ourselves in this situation. Will you stay on top of this for us, please, Thotho, and update us as to what's happening there, especially if anything happens in terms of Mr. Zuma's call, because I know he's calling for that recount. Thank you so much, my brother. Appreciate your time and your analysis, your insight as to what's happening in South Africa. Thank you so much.
No, thanks. And the final thing, there is a false narrative that is forcing this alliance with the DA, is that if the DA is not going to be part of this government or whatever, is going to affect the economy and the investors, and which is false, because the ANC once had 2/3 majority under Thabo Mbeki, and it grew economy up to 4%, exponentially, it grew it. So there is some white propaganda that is being peddled here. Yes. And remember, before our elections, the American embassy called our IEC, our Independent Electoral Commission, to the embassy. They had a meeting with them, American embassy, and then there was a big uproar that since when a foreign diplomatic corps call our local electoral commission to have a meeting with them. Wow. So there is a whole lot of dynamics that when people on a hindsight, they look at all of these things, these are potential for serious havoc and instability.
Wow, let us hope that it works out peacefully, that Mr. Ramaphosa will move away from this madness that he's embarked upon, and that somehow South Africa will be free. Thank you so much, my brother.
Okay, thank you so much. And have a wonderful day.
You too. It is not the best news coming out of South Africa. It is, as a matter of fact, very sad news coming out of South Africa. What is about to happen in South Africa, if it happens, could see those who presided over and were active members in the apartheid regime right back at the helm of things. They are behind the scenes, but we could see them right at the front of governing here on the island. So standing by to speak with Minister Orlando Terry-Long. Right, back with you inside of the Africa Forum. This is Running African. All right, so we were scheduled, and we are scheduled to speak with Minister Orlando Terry-Long about the Jamaica Diaspora Conference that's happening June 16 to 19 at the where is it happening? Well, the Jamaica Diaspora Conference, Biennial Global Forum Connecting Jamaica. Well, it should be happening in Montego. Is it Montego Bay or Kingston? All right. In any case, we're standing by to speak with Mr. Terry-Long. Mr. Terry-Long, we're not getting you on the phone lines, and politicians have a way of doing this, confirming for my program and then somehow not turning up on the day. So, I don't know why. I have a good guess, but I'm not going to spend all morning guessing. So, if anybody have a number for Mr. Terry-Long, please to call him. We have his numbers. We are calling him, and we're not getting him on the phone lines. So, but we are scheduled to speak with him in this segment of the program about the Jamaica Diaspora Conference. conference that has been going on for many years. If you recall, when the Jamaica Diaspora Conference started way back, was it 10 years ago or 20 years? A long time, I remember some of the people who were at the helm of ensuring that the communications team included people like Faye Ellington and so many others, and all of us were galvanized to be part of that system. So, and every year we do these interviews because we are committed to this. We think it is a good idea. Whatever the challenge is, we think the Jamaica Diaspora Conference is a very, very good idea. And so, as usual, this year we are standing by to have a conversation with the minister in charge about the conference. Right, it is being done through the Ministry of Foreign Affairs and Foreign Trade, and there are several initiatives that are included this year. Wanted to have that conversation with the minister about that. All right, so we're not getting him online. And the faithful students of the Running African School of Self-Empowerment. Thank you so much, my brother. Aldith Hunka says, Hotep Running African Family. I'm pulling my intelligent face, as you can see. It validates my presence in class. Hailing you from a semi-sunny but chilly afternoon in the Netherlands. You're back in the Netherlands, Aldith. While I have returned to earn the Dunza to return to Pocadice ASAP. Unfortunately, I have to leave class early today, so asking all students to take plenty of notes for me to send later on. All right, have a good day, Aldith. And I didn't realize you'd gone back. All right, we'll link up when you come forward. And as she says, all right, okay, so there's the conversation. Omoliwa, Tia, how you do, my sister, says, pleasant Sunday morning, KABU, Running African Family. And then my sister Donna Mattis says, Hotep KABU and the Running African Family. And Donna, I know that there's some comments I saw from you there, so I'm going to go down and read some of them. Always very insightful comments from you. So let me go. Russia, you say, is Russia a viable option for Africa? From China to Russia, is an external power a viable option for us Africans when international capital is not under our control? Is BRICS fatalistic imperialism by another name? When international capital and African leadership meet, it is going to come down to the kind of leadership we have in Africa that will leverage the power we have as the owners of a reservoir of resources, wealth, to demand equity in any partnership. It is our only option. And she goes on to say it cannot be that we are swapping Euro-American for another, relinquishing of our sovereignty to a new master. That is my fear in this new era of Russia-Africa relations. It is all well and good, but as long as we are not moving towards the establishment of an international workers' economy, then we will be exactly where we were under Euro-American exploitation. And that right there is a danger. That right there is a consideration. You say it's a lesser of three evils or four evils, but it is still what it is. And so Africa's agency is what is at stake. And she continues, this is Donna also talking about South Africa. She says, a government of national unity isn't reflection of truth and reconciliation that continue the disenfranchisement of black South Africans. Seems like a maintenance of the order. Yes, it is. If not worse. It is worse. Because this is 2024. And in 1994, people were still trying to figure out where to go, how to do, and what to do. Yes, they were tricked. Royally tricked. But what is causing this decision right now? We know the surface answer, which is that they've all sold out and they're controlled. But goodness gracious me, this is South Africa. Kiza Soze says, good morning all. Good morning to you too. Patricia Lindsay says, we must stand up and start preparing our own empires. Weakness cannot get us there. Strong-minded and willpower. Do as our ancestors do. Agreed, my sister. Ambleton Ray says, Grand Rising family, please mark me present. Okay. And, okay, so Donna talking about, narcissistic fuming at Barbados for one-upping Jamaica drove wholeness to establish a CRC, his legacy at the forefront. All right, kind of long one, so let me get some others in. I'll read that later. Thank you so much, Donna. She talks also about the Beach Control Act and the Judicial Committee of the Privy Council. I do talk about the Privy Council. You know, it was just the other day that I'm listening to former Prime Minister Patterson, you know, and former Prime Minister Patterson has to say some things before him say some things. And former Prime Minister Patterson needs an entire Truth and Reconciliation Commission for himself. And so he has to do that before him say something. This is my thinking on this whole thing. Because it was just the other day that former Prime Minister Patterson was a member of the Privy Council. While he was Prime Minister, he was a member of the Privy Council. And I'm not batting for anybody, but it is what it is, and I cannot help but deal with the isness of things. So while former Prime Minister Patterson is talking about the idea of whether or not, whether legally, constitutionally, or otherwise, a person can be a British citizen and be a prime minister, you know, of Jamaica. But can you be a member of the Privy Council and be a prime minister of Jamaica? Do you know what it means to be a member of the Privy Council and be a prime minister of Jamaica for so many years? So that's why I'm saying that former Prime Minister Patterson has to have him whole team of truth and him alone, truth and reconciliation before him says something. Because otherwise from that, it is platitudinous peroration. So Andrew Lumsden says Tobago is the Jamaica of Trinidad and Tobago. Tobago is a Have you heard that those who eat the cascadura must return to Trinidad? Yeah. And Donna Marty says, congratulations, Elaine. All right. Cry, cry, the beloved South Africa. I know. The Marikana Massacre 2012. Oh, goodness. Wow. Wow. There's just so much. Yes, things turning and turning in the widening gar. The falcon cannot hear. The falconer cannot hear the falcon. Things fall apart. The center cannot hold. Mere anarchy is loose upon the world. So Eloise says, Hotep, my beautiful family, I guess you are aware that Russia had done this many times and mostly in 2019. Africa should never forget who we are, who are their friends and who are their enemies. Yes, the first Africa Summit in 2019 and then the 2023 Africa-Russia Summit. We're listening. Denise Isis Miller says, did she just say Haitian babies as young as 10 months are being detained here in Jamaica? Yes, Malaine did say that, Isis. Malaine did say that. And Patricia Lindsay says, greetings, Sister KABU, present for the good news today on cultural information and Black Lives Matter. Aldith says the language barrier for Haitian children is a non-issue. A child learns a new language in 3 to 6 months. I know because that's how I learned 6 languages as an expat child. You're going to come in here and talk all 6 of them so that we hear you next time. Okay, yes, Aldith, I know. And all right, so did I skip any? Well, Andrew did say that the coffee was ready, the source found, and good morning, beautiful people. And then he did come back to say that JPS had intervened. I hope you're back up and running now, Andrew, at 9:44. So let me see.